So I'd like to start with a story. And the story is about a young family, early 30s, and the husband and wife were married for about a year, 3 kids, and they were doing pretty good. They were both working, everything was fine. They weren't overly wealthy, they weren't overly not wealthy, they were just kind of, getting by, building a family, building a life, just, like most 30-year-old couples do. And then one day, the husband started having this abdominal pain, and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And so they started going to doctors, and these doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. They were running all kinds of tests, MRIs and CAT scans and all different kinds of scans, and nobody could figure out what it was. He even had to have a colonoscopy, which at, age 32, I think he was at the time, was not the most fun thing and not anything you would expect at that age. But still, there was no explanation for why he was having this pain. And so they were just trying all these different things, and eventually he ended up at a physical therapist. Just kind of one of those things where it's like, well, we've got nothing else to try, so let's try physical therapy. And what the physical therapist did, not anything related to, her treatments or her manipulations or the exercises she was giving him to do, she pulled his scan up and she said, well, why am I working on this when you have this herniated disc down here? And it turns out that the doctor that ordered the scans, he ordered the scans for this section of the back. And because he only ordered it for this section of the back, he didn't look at this part of the scan down here and see that he had this issue. So months had gone by and no treatment for this thing. And so he ended up having back surgery. And they were told that there was a 50-50 shot of it being successful. And so he had the surgery, and turned out that they were in the unlucky 50% and it didn't work. And so he was sort of diagnosed with this chronic pain for the rest of his life, and started on, all kinds of medications and different treatments and shots and injections, and, their kids were, just everybody was being affected by this. And one day he came home and said, I just can't work anymore. He was a truck driver and bouncing around in the truck all day long, and everything, just sitting in the seat. He couldn't do it. And so he came home and he told his wife he couldn't work anymore, and it just changed their life forever. They went from a 2-income household to a 1-income household overnight, and their entire life blew up. And the reason this story is so important and impactful to me is because it's my family, and it was my husband, and it was me that he came home to and told that he couldn't work anymore. And so I will never forget that day, and I'll never forget the next morning when we had to go to daycare and pull our 2 kids out. And, I stood crying in the director's office asking if we could please not have to pay the rest of the month that we were contractually obligated to pay. And she let us go. She was really nice. But, those circumstances are things that happen in people's lives all the time. And it's something so simple like that that can lead to just disastrous changes in families. And we didn't have any disability insurance for him. He didn't have any through that job. He hadn't been there that long. We didn't have any outside disability coverage, so there was nothing to replace his income. We literally went from 2 incomes to 1 overnight. And so, panic sets in, and you're just trying to figure out what to do and how to make it all work and how are you going to put food on the table. And we had a really, really hard 3 years after that. 3 years of fighting with Social Security to be able to get disability benefits. And, as a 30-something at the time, you pretty much know that as soon as you apply, you're going to get declined. There's no way that they're going to approve you. Even as, an older person, 70% of people get declined the first time. And so it was 3 years before, the lawyers and all the appeals and everything were able to help us and get us some relief there. So I literally know what it feels like to stand in line at a food pantry to be able to feed my kids. And I know what it feels like to be, juggling those bills and trying to figure out how can I pay to keep a roof over our head and also keep the heat on, and, just the decisions you have to make and the ways that you have to, be able to coordinate and make things work. without any kind of disability coverage like that is, it's heartbreaking, and it changes people's lives all the time. So that is the reason why I do what I do now. That was 7 years ago when that happened, and I never could have said this before, but it was a huge blessing for us. And we are now on the other side of it. Things are good now. We are, we're a happy family now. The pain will always be there. He's never going to be able to work again. But he's a stay-at-home dad now. And although he definitely wasn't cut out to be a stay-at-home dad, and he never would have chosen that, he's home with our kids every day. And he gets to be with them, and he gets to take them to school, and we don't have to put him in daycare anymore. And, there's a lot of blessings that have come from it. But the biggest one is that now I can help other people to plan for those types of things, so that when tragedy strikes, they're going to be okay. They don't have to panic, and they don't have to have that, dread and that fear of, how am I going to put food on the table? How are my kids not going to starve? So that's my story. That's why I do what I do, and that's why I love what I do. I'd like to do a little activity with you. And I just want to say up front, because I know money is scary and everybody hates talking about money, like you said. It is not a fun topic to talk about, and I'm not going to ask you one personal question tonight, I swear. I'm not going to make you talk about money. I'm going to do the talking, and you can ask questions at the end, but this is just all about education. So if you can pull out in your workbooks there is a piece of paper that has 5 blue circles on it. It should be the second piece of paper that you see there. This is what we call at Thrivent, the company that I work for, the 5S journey. Our mission at Thrivent, the reason I've been there so long and the reason why I love this company, is our mission is to help people be wise with money and to live generously. And where that starts for us is figuring out how you feel about your money. So this is not about a dollar figure at all. And starting with any kind of financial planning is not about the dollars and cents. It's about, where are you right now? How do you feel? And that's different for everybody. So the 5 words that are on there, surviving, struggling, stable, secure, and surplus, they have a different meaning for everybody. You can have a millionaire who might only put themselves at stable. And you can have somebody who has 0 in the bank, but feels like they can give back, that they're in a surplus. So it's completely different for everyone. So if you could I'll give you 10 seconds. You don't have to write it down if you don't want anyone to see where you place yourself. You can write it down if you want. Figure out where you would put yourself on that spectrum.
Tell me the question again.
Where would you place yourself on that 5S journey? How you feel about your own financial situation. Everybody got it? Okay. Now I want you to think, where do you want to be? So if you're, in the middle, how far up do you want to move up that ladder? What steps could you take to move up that ladder? What would you change in your life? How would you change the way that you're handling your money now to be able to move up to where you want to be on that ladder or on that spectrum? Does it involve spending less than you make? Does it involve being wise with your debt? Protecting yourself against setbacks? Those are some of the really common things that are simple, not easy, but simple. In fact, they're really, really hard to do. Those are the types of things that I help people with. My job is to help people move up that ladder and then put wedges in place so that they can't move backwards again. Or at least, put the plans in place so that if something happens to make them move backwards, that it's not as bad as it could be. I want you to think as well, what could happen to cause you to move backwards? Picture that in your mind. Could it be a disability, a premature death, you or your spouse? What would happen to your kids? Not saving enough for retirement. Not knowing where to invest your money to save it so that it grows the way you want it to. Those are all types of things that can move you backwards. And that's the type of thing that we like to help our clients with. So all that said, as women, we have some really specific challenges that, sorry Joe, men don't have. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And it's going to be pretty high level because everybody's situation is different, and so I can't speak to anyone's, personal situation unless we sit down individually. So this is going to be kind of in generalities here. But some of the challenges that women have specifically are that we live longer than men. Is anyone surprised by that? I think we all probably know that that's the case. We do. We live longer than men do, which means that we're also more likely when we're older to be living on our own. Both of those things mean that we need more money to be able to do the things we want to do in those years. So if we have more years to live, we're going to need more money to get through that. We're also more likely to take breaks from our career to care for children or aging parents, maybe even family friends. I know people that have had to break away to be a caregiver for people that aren't even related to them. So you never know what people are dealing with in their lives, but taking that break is something that women are more likely to have to do. And then the last thing, my son will completely disagree with me and argue with me on this, but yes, women do get paid less. It's actually about they make 82% of what men make across the board. And so that means that we have less retirement savings, we have less that's going into our 401ks, our 403bs, whatever retirement plans we have, and also we have less Social Security benefits. I gotta make sure I don't move my mouse. And these are coming up again, I don't know why. There we go. So when it comes to women living longer than men, one of the statistics that we like to call out is that when you're age 65, a woman can expect to live 20 and a half more years versus only 18 years for a man. So when we're talking about having to save that extra money because we're going to live longer, it's about 2.5 years on average that we have extra that we need to save for. And of all the population over 85, 66% of them are women. And so this, becomes a bigger area that we need to help women with because men just, for whatever reason, don't want to stay on the planet as long as we do. All right, some of the impacts to our retirement savings and our savings in general when it comes to breaking away from our career is stepping out to be a caregiver. Obviously, we've lost the income that we would be earning at that time. But we also lose any benefits that we get from our employer during that time. So that's something that not a lot of people think about. Your employer may match any contributions you're making to your 401k or to your 403b. That's free money that you're getting while you're working. If you take a break from working, then you're missing out on that. You're also missing out on the money that you would be contributing to Social Security, which means less benefits for you when it comes time to retire. If you have taken a break and you are out of the job market and something happens, divorce, your spouse loses their job, you are much more vulnerable there because now you're both not working. So there's a lot of risks that come along with that too, but inherent to women because we are the ones that typically are taking that break. And then when you do go into the workforce again, you never know if you're going to have your job there or not. Did I miss something? Oh, I missed the last bullet point. And so the same thing that we were talking about there, but your salary and then as well your potential to advance in your career. So if you're someone who is looking to be promoted, anything like that, if you're breaking out of your steady career, then it's harder to achieve that career advancement. As I said, women earn about 82% of what men earn, which then impacts your savings, your Social Security retirement benefits, and also your pensions. Those are becoming pretty rare nowadays, but there are still people that have pensions. And if you are a woman, generally you're going to have less money that's being put into that. And then again, the same thing that we talked about on the previous slide with if you are earning less, then you have an increased vulnerability to things that can happen, divorce, job loss, illness, like a disability, anything like that. So one of the things that one of the main questions we get is, well, I don't know how much I'm going to need when I retire. How could I possibly know 20, 30 years down the road, how much my living expenses are going to be? And so we can help you figure that out. But a general guideline that we go by is that you're going to need somewhere between 60 and 90% of what you are using now for living expenses. And so what we do is we sit down with our clients and we start talking about what does it look like now? What is your mortgage payment? Well, are you going to have that mortgage payment when you retire? Are you planning on paying off that house, before you quit working? That's going to lower your expenses. but what is your health care going to look like? Those expenses usually go up in retirement. So there's different things that we take into account when we're looking at those calculations. The other thing is, what do you want to do in retirement? A lot of people want to travel. That's like the number one thing that we hear. Where do you want to travel to? You looking overseas? You staying here? You going to Disney with the grandkids? You know, all these things we can put some ballpark figures around and kind of get an idea for what you might be looking at. This is all projections. It's all going to change at some point, but at least we can start, you know, calculating and putting some numbers to what you might need to save. Any extra hobbies that you might plan to pick up? You know, like, do you want to start going to the symphony, or, you know, do you want to start painting more? You know, things like that that you might not be spending money on now, but you plan to spend money on when you retire. Gardening, you know, what kind of gardening tools you're going to need now, you know, then that you're not using right now because you don't have time. So really it's just like, look at your expenses right now and then start just dreaming, start thinking, and we can plan for what those expenses might be in retirement. The other thing that you're going to have to account for, and we have calculators that help do this, is inflation. So what this chart is showing you is that assuming 3% inflation, that's the number we typically use, in 25 years, the things that you spend, if you were to buy something for $50,000 today, it would cost $100,000 in 25 years. So what that means for your retirement savings is you need to plan to outpace inflation. You want to make sure that the money you're putting away now is going to buy what you want it to buy in retirement, and we can help you with that. I know that's scary. I heard somebody say wow over there. But the cool thing is that saving just a little bit now, or increasing what you're saving just a little bit now, can have a pretty big impact. So this shows you just two different scenarios. Jane and Sally both make the same amount of money, $50,000. Jane is putting away 5% at $208, and Sally's putting away 8% at $333. They both save for the same amount of time. They both earned 5% on that money, and look at the difference at the bottom. So after 15 years, by saving just 3% more, Sally's able to get almost $90,000 versus the $55,000 that Jane got. So just that little bit, you know, and you don't have to take it out or take it off in big chunks, you know, just save 1 extra percent this year. Then you can up it again next year. I mean, that's how I got started. It was just a little bit at a time, baby steps, baby steps. I always got scared when I started out with this because I'm like, well, I don't have, you know, an extra $1,000 a month to put towards this. You don't need to have $1,000 a month. Start little, do what you can. It does make a big difference. Taxes, lovely taxes. We have some really great tools at Thrivent that we use to help people figure out their taxes. So right now, because of the tax legislation that just went in force, a lot of people are uncertain about what their taxes are going to look like next year. You know, how's that going to impact them? Do they need to be putting away more money right now? Are they going to be getting money back? We have software, it's called What If Tax, and we can literally put in your taxes from 2017 and tell you exactly what you're going to owe next year. So that's software that we're using with our clients right now, and it's very helpful. We also use it to project into retirement. What are your taxes going to look like in retirement? What kind of income, you know, might you be looking at based on your Social Security benefits, your pensions, your retirement accounts, and what types of accounts are those in? Because there are all different kinds of products out there. Some are tax-free, some are pre-tax, some are post-tax. And we can help you look at those and figure out, you know, what does this mean? How, you know, what am I going to be able to taking as income when I do retire? The key thing that we find is that you need to plan for different buckets of money in retirement. And so there's only so many places you can pull income from: Social Security, pension, and your individual savings accounts. But you want to be able to make sure that you have those planned out well so that you have income streams that make sense for you tax-wise. You want to make sure that your money is working efficiently for you. And we can help you figure out what that looks like and what that, you know, what steps you need to take now as far as getting those buckets open so that they're there and available when you need them to be. Healthcare costs in retirement go up for most people. There's not many where it's the opposite case. And so planning for higher health expenses, setting aside money for that is really important. Taking a look at your family history, you know, what does that look like? And may that have a bearing on you? The same thing goes, I always tell people when it comes to how much you need to save for retirement, as well as when to take Social Security, how long did your parents live? How long did your grandparents live? You know, do you have longevity in your family? Because that can tell us a lot about when you need to start taking some of those benefits. If, you know, the history in your family tells you that no woman in your family lived past the age of 70, then you might not wait till 70 to take Social Security. You know, you might want to be taking that at 62. So those are the kinds of things we look at. Same thing with healthcare. So if you have a history of Alzheimer's in your family, and you know that there's a higher risk of you needing nursing care at some point, then you might want to be looking at long-term care insurance. You know, those expenses are high. I know it says here that the average monthly cost of a nursing home is $6,800, but in Pennsylvania, the average annual cost of nursing care for a year is $99,000, which is huge. You know, I mean, if I was faced with a bill like that, $100,000 for nursing care, I don't know what I would do. So long-term care insurance is definitely something on my bucket list that, well, I don't know, call it a bucket list because I don't want to buy it, but I'm gonna buy it. Because I want to make sure that I have that coverage there. You know, those are huge expenses to have to shell out of pocket. And if you don't have the money to shell it out, and if you don't have long-term care insurance and you're looking at Medicaid, then you've got to spend everything you have before you can do that. So a lot of things to think about there, but you know, healthcare costs do rise, and that's something that you want to make sure that you consider as part of your financial plan. All right, so these are things that we've talked about, but just to summarize them, yes, we're living longer. No, that's not expected to stop. Retirement can last a lot longer than it used to. And so with that and Social Security, you know, kind of fluctuating, and nobody knows what's happening with that and whether it's going to be there for us and how much it's going to be there for us, you know, retirement can last a lot longer, and we need to start saving more outside of our employer plans because they can only go so far. You want to make sure you're setting aside more than that. And the earlier you can start planning, the better. But it's never too late. So, thank you.